Now, the premise and inspiration for this conversation is his quote, in which he states, "Now is the time to control our imagination and attention." By control, I do not mean restraint by willpower, but rather cultivation through love and compassion. With so much of the world in discord, we cannot possibly emphasize too strongly the power of imaginative love. In Thursday's video, I discussed building a relationship, and I spoke of, in imagination, how I have built a relationship with myself, and I travel in imagination to worlds and experiences. And through these alterations that occur in consciousness from the experiences, the vividness in imagination, it expresses itself in behaviors, how I relate to others, how they relate to me, which helps us understand to a deeper degree what we discussed in Tuesday's video regarding suggestion. Now, this idea of imaginative love, when it comes to being your own best friend and actually traveling the world of mind and imagination, was inspired by something that I had learned from Earl Nightingale in The Strangest Secret. And it's the story of Acres of Diamonds. Now, Russell Conwell, who wrote the story, was a Baptist minister, a lawyer and writer, and he was also the founder of Temple University in Philadelphia, which was funded by many millions of dollars which he had earned by traveling and giving his famous Acres of Diamonds speech. We want to recognize something very important about this speech, that we really have a mental environment. It's infinite. The world of imagination is infinite. And we can imagine anything that we want. And if we identify with something in our imagination, which we actually do all day long, it expresses itself in the outer aspects of our life. So we are taught to imagine from the perspective of love. We'll go through some questions that, if you go through a similar process as I had shared in Thursday's video, then you can find these questions to be very helpful. We'll get into that in a moment. Now, Acres of Diamonds, the story goes that there was a farmer who heard tales about other farmers earning millions by discovering diamond mines. Now, these tales had excited the farmer to the point where he ended up selling his farm and actually spending the rest of his life wandering Africa, searching unsuccessfully for diamond mines and diamonds which he never ended up finding. Meanwhile, the man who had bought the farm happened to be crossing a small stream on the property one day when he noticed a flash of light in it. So he bends down and picks up a stone. Now, it was a kind of a larger stone, and he admired it, and he brought it in to his house, and he placed it on his fireplace mantle. Now, some time had passed, and someone who visited his house picked up the stone and examined it very closely. And he asked the farmer, "Where did you get this?" And so the farmer says, "I found it in the stream." And he asked the farmer if he knew what he had found, and the farmer said no. He thought it was a piece of crystal. And so the visitor tells him then that he had found one of the largest diamonds ever discovered. Now, the farmer initially had some trouble believing this, and he actually even told the man that the creek was full of such stones. Not as large as the one on his mantle, but sprinkled all throughout the creek bottom. So it turns out that the farm that the first farmer had sold ended up being a diamond mine. It actually turned out to be one of the most productive diamond mines on the entire continent of Africa. The first farmer had actually owned acres of diamonds, but he sold his farm for practically nothing in order to look elsewhere for the diamonds. Now, the central lesson of the story is that one does not need to look elsewhere for opportunity, fortune, and that really the opportunities are found where they are right now. Now, someone may look around and they say, well, I don't see it. I don't see the opportunities. Now, I believe the Acres of Diamonds story is an allegory of mind. And that if a person goes into their imagination, discovers what they truly love, where the light shines, let's say, and commits to that which they love in imagination, they eventually see it in their experiences. Now, having been a consultant in business for quite a number of years, going on to almost 10 years, one of the things that we do is we go into businesses and we help them see these opportunities that they might not see. And what we find is the fundamental reason is they think that the opportunities are elsewhere, outside of their business. What this symbolically represents is that they're thinking that the opportunities are outside of themselves. Because body and, let's look over here with the logical levels here. Environment, behaviors, capabilities are expressions of mind. Based on communication with another person, you can see exactly what it is that they're seeing, where they're looking. I mean, even literally. And when we have a conversation like this, for example, Acres of Diamonds story or something that brings a person back to the realization of the infinite world of imagination. And a lot of times they remember these things from earlier childhood experiences where they would see opportunities everywhere. And they go back into that state of mind. They then open up their eyes and they see the opportunities. All of a sudden, the relationships, the assets, the resources, they're able to connect them together in interesting ways. They find revenue streams. They find operational opportunities for efficiency that will allow them to produce more yield. And it's all a result of working with imagination. Now, let's weave this into our discussion today. Neville states, by imagination, we are all reaping our destinies, whether they be good, bad, or indifferent. Imagination has full power of objective realization, and every stage of man's progress or regression is made by the exercise of imagination. Exercise of imagination. I like that. See, perhaps on this journey we get too caught up by looking at this outer world and saying that's all that exists. When what is being suggested here is that all of this outer world is actually sourced from within. And that if we actually travel in our imagination, and we'll ask some questions here to ourselves, again related over to Thursday's video, in which we can actually discover our own version of diamonds within and commit to them in imagination and allow them to express, which is another reason why I love the Master Key System by Charles Hannell, because all throughout the volumes of books that he had released as part of the correspondence program, he had included exercises to reconnect us back to the vividness of imagination. And if you haven't watched the video that I've done on that, I'll put a link in the description to it, and I recommend using those exercises. Or even doing what I mentioned in Thursday's video. He says, I believe with William Blake, what seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be, and is productive of the most dreadful consequences, to those to whom it seems to be, even of torments, despair, and eternal death. See, we look at this outer world and it's revealing what's within ourselves. If we do not see the opportunities, then I believe it's safe to assume that we're not seeing the opportunities within ourselves in our own imagination. Either we don't believe in the vividness and the realness of our imagination as the source of this expression of life. Maybe we had certain thinking patterns regarding imagination. We're like, okay, well, this is just imagination, and it's just something you use once in a while. The reality is we're imagining all day long. The question is, what are we imagining? So he says, by imagining and desire, we become what we desire to be. Let us affirm to ourselves that we are what we imagine. If we persist in the assumption that we are what we wish to be, we will become transformed into that which we have imagined ourselves to be. We were born by a natural miracle of love, and for a brief space of time, our needs were all another's care. In that simple truth lies the secret of life. Now let's look at this closely. He says, we were born by a natural miracle of love. He also says, by imagination and desire, we become what we desire to be. What if we can go into our imagination and ask ourselves certain questions in which it stimulates what we truly love, because we know that it is easy to commit to that which we truly love. Perhaps we might not be doing that very often, and thus imagining and committing to things that we do not love, and thus see the expressions of it. In the entrepreneurial path, when a person commits to going into their imagination and discovering the diamonds that already exist in mind, the acres of diamonds, they find them as ideas, hunches, inspirations in which they commit to in imagination and allow to express, and they're able to see it everywhere they go. In their relationships, in the resources, in the assets, in the different aspects that make up, you could say, parts that make up the whole on the journey to realizing their entrepreneurial success. Now, this is also true for other areas of life. Now, here are some questions, some good questions to ask that will allow us to stimulate what we truly love and commit to it. Because here's the thing about it. If we stimulate in our imagination that which we truly love, then it brings forth a feeling. And remember, feeling is the secret. And through imagining what we love and fusing with it, because feeling is the secret, we then have committed to it, and then we allow it to express. And we'll see it. Let's work with the model here. In our capabilities or skill cultivation, let's say if you're an athlete or a musician, we actually genuinely show up and enjoy learning how to play the musical instrument. In our behaviors, a lot of times we'll see ourselves automatically doing the things in an optimal way, as we had discussed in regards to communication in Tuesday's video. That from the mental state, the behaviors, the words flow in relation to communication, and what is deeper than that, beyond the verbal and visible communication aspects, is the energy behind it, which is expressed from the state of mind. Behaviors and environments, expressions of mind. So by asking these questions, we can stimulate our imagination, and perhaps we can benefit from having a conversation with ourselves regarding these questions. These questions were inspired by my own conversations with myself. So I can ensure that I'm imagining that which I truly love, because I know that when I truly love something, I'll commit to it. A child commits to what they truly love. Why is it then that we see people not committing to what they truly love? Well, that's the programming. See, I was in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, the last week. I'd mentioned it. And I found it to be very inspiring. And one of the words that was brought up in many of the communications was the word matrix. Matrix. And a lot of people were saying to me that, one of the reasons why they traveled and decided to change their life around over the last few years is because they want to escape the matrix. Now, if we look at the definition of matrix, and I'll pull it up here on my phone, it says, an environment or material in which something develops, a surrounding medium or structure. So the question we want to ask ourselves is, what is our true environment? Now, I recommend the acres of diamonds in imagination. Because if you do that, then you let go of programming that is not true to who you really are. Now, some of this program might be deeply embedded in the subconscious mind, so that's why I recommend The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. We might find ourselves automatically reacting to or unconsciously saying I am to certain aspects in relation to capabilities, behaviors, environments, which are aspects related to the self-image, values and beliefs in which we unconsciously identify with, and we can call that the programming. What we want is the true programming that's in harmony with our vision, and we find that by committing to what we love. So here are some good questions to ask. What would my ideal lifestyle look like? I met many last week that were living that lifestyle. There was a time when I first started doing this, traveling and working at the same time, where you would meet individuals like this, and it was kind of rare, but now I see it more often. More so than ever before, people are running their own businesses, working remotely, and actually looking at how they want to live as art. Wonderful. We had amazing conversations regarding this, but good question to ask. What would my ideal lifestyle look like? Imagine it. Commit to it in imagination. Dwell in it in your imagination, and know that from there, all inspiration flows. Behaviors change, capabilities change, environments change. You may get a hunch or inspiration to travel. You may get an idea to radically change your life around. Certainly that has been the case for me in certain stages of my journey. Number 2, when I look back at my past, what life experiences did I find meaningful? Now, this information is not new to us. We already know this stuff. We can benefit, however, which is why I like to listen to The Strangest Secret over and over again, from listening to the same information or the same information from different perspectives, because we could get identified with programming that is not truly who we are. We can let go of it by asking ourselves, what were we like as children? That's actually one of the questions. What were my childhood goals? Now, these questions are designed to stimulate conversation within yourself. We also know that inner conversation shapes our reality. The conversations that we have with ourselves in imagination, with vividness, play out as theater. As a matter of fact, I noticed this as well last week. The inner conversations that I was having with myself were echoed in the words and sentences and what people were saying to me. We find that to be very interesting as we work with this information, how the outer reflects the inner with vivid accuracy. How do I enjoy expressing myself creatively? See, we live in an interesting time right now because technology, and having a technology background myself, 10 years in corporate IT, having my own IT business, the technology was there to allow us to automate the things that we don't want to do, the things that we don't love to do, so that we could focus on creativity, art, imagination, and allow ourselves to express in various shapes and forms. This is one of the reasons why I believe I see people more so today than ever before, living how they truly want to live. Because when I look at their businesses and what they're doing, technology seems to be supporting their lifestyle. So they're not at the whim of technology, but rather they are at the cause, because we are at the cause. We can only suggest to ourselves that we are at the effect. And I had mentioned this in Tuesday's video. There is one suggester, and we are that suggester within ourselves. But by asking these questions, it stimulates in our imagination. So we bypass, transcend that programming, and for moments in time, we can dwell in our imagination. As Neville states, by imagination and desire, we become what we desire to be. So we are focusing on what we love, because that's what we truly desire. As mentioned many times, love is the law. That's how we truly want to live. Transcendent past the programming. This is what we discover more so every day. What past accomplishments inspire me? Maybe we look back at our life and we see certain goals realized, visions realized, skills cultivated, changes that we've made before in which we felt inspired. We felt love because we knew that we put our mind to something. We actually went into the acres of diamond and we made it happen. Now, reflecting upon the acres of diamond story, one can say, okay, well, what outside here? See, this is where we're taught to go within ourselves and find it within ourselves by asking these stimulating questions. Because by asking these stimulating questions, automatically so, we imagine that which we desire. And perhaps we have different associations that aren't necessarily true to what we truly want to experience from the perspective of love as we look at our five sensory experience, as we look at our outer world, and we conclude that it is not there. When in actuality, we go back into our imagination and we commit to what we love and we open up our eyes, and then all of a sudden we know what to do. We start to see opportunities, such as what I mentioned earlier in the conversations that I have with others. I see this often. What and where do I find inspiration? So I love to travel because I know that when I travel, I find lots of inspiration. Now, I also mentioned that I travel in imagination with myself on Thursday's video. So I do both. I travel in imagination and I travel to different countries. Understand what inspires you. Where do you find your inspiration? You don't need to know why and how the inspiration is formed. I simply commit to that which I love, and I do it. Now, it's become a lot easier now than it was, let's say, when I was in my 20s, because during that time, I was insecure, I lacked self-confidence, and I just allowed others to do the thinking for me. See, that's the key sentence. I allowed it. You can allow it as well if you want to. We're actually doing it. We're either allowing the thinking from others. Remember, Steve Jobs had said this in his commencement speech. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. I keep into consideration the opinions of others. However, the inner voice, the inward relationship with myself determines what I truly want to experience. Perhaps these questions stimulate us back because they automatically cause us to vision. Let's look at the model here. When we imagine these things and commit to them in imagination, everything else changes. As we had discussed a few videos ago, Neville speaks of how change happens automatically. I'll put a link in the description to that video. From the commitment. Reflect on your own life. Anytime you had truly committed to what you love, change happened instantaneously. It may be a small change, but it continued to build until you realized your vision. Or there are times where changes happen radically as far as our own interpretations go in relation to the results. Person gets a rapid business growth all of a sudden. Or they all of a sudden start to see that they're on the true path to realizing that from a place of flow and love. They feel it. Feeling is the secret. So what we want as a result of working with this information is to value imagination and realize that imagination is the acres of diamonds. It's found within ourselves, and we can travel in imagination. And we see, Russell Conwell working with imagination, sharing a story that inspires others. He loved to share that story, and he earned millions of dollars doing it to create Temple University to further inspire others. Earl Nightingale went on to release many programs and audios. I really felt that he was doing what he truly loved. He loved to communicate. He was an effective communicator, and I believe it was because it was truly his form of artistic expression. And that's the way I felt when I studied the work from Russell Conwell. I felt that really what he was doing when he was traveling around was doing what he really loves to do, which is share these stories. I noticed this from my own personal experience. Although many have found this YouTube channel from the internet, everyone I talked to in Playa del Carmen pulled out their phone and subscribed to my channel. We'll notice this when we do what we really love to do. So again, the questions. What would my ideal lifestyle look like? When I look back at my past, what life experiences did I find meaningful? What were my childhood goals? How do I enjoy expressing myself creatively? What past accomplishments inspire me? What and where do I find inspiration? By asking these questions, it stimulates in imagination that which we truly love. We commit to what we truly love, and then things happen automatically. I don't have to try to do things because it's an expression of that which we love. So the acres of diamonds within ourselves is representative of imagination, and the diamonds can be looked at as asking the questions, inquiring within ourselves about what we truly love. And when we commit to in imagination, the light shines of consciousness and expresses itself as the outer aspects of our life, revealing our acres of diamonds in reality. Now, I trust you found this to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion in relation to these questions to further encourage that which we truly love and live by the philosophy in which Neville stated, with so much of the world in discord, we cannot possibly emphasize too strongly the power of imaginative love. We could say, I realize, upon travel into my infinite world within of imagination, I discover what I truly love, which is flashed in my mind's eye as visions of my ideal lifestyle. Upon reflection, I'm able to bring forth experiences from my past in which I found meaningful, which reveal how I truly am, what I truly love, what I truly desire to express further in my creativity, artistic expression, innovation. I recognize this ties into how I always truly wanted to see myself be. Now I'm allowing myself to express it more so, multiplying the accomplishments from the inspiration within that reflects as the acres of diamonds without, which is a reflection of the acres of diamonds in imagination. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.